When we change our mindsets, we can change our outcomes. Save our lives from sadness, depression, and anxiety, thus giving us the freedom to live the life we want. Hi, I'm Stuart Haskin, founder of getsafe, and your host of the Movement for Change podcast. Hi, it's Stuart. Welcome back. Today we have Jeff Brown returning. He will walk us through a case where a young girl was abused at her own home by someone who should have protected her, not abused her. Let's listen to Jeff. Thanks for joining. Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast Movement for Change. I'm Stuart Haskin, your host, and I have my guest back, my friend Jeff Brown. I thought the last episode he was on was good and horrifying to hear information like that, but I think it is good for us to hear things like that. It's our true crime podcast in a sense, our section of that, and it's all true. And I have Jeff here. Hey Jeff, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. So let's do a recap on you. You were 31 years at the Orange County Sheriff's Department, started in jails as everyone does, moved up and did other things there. Then you went into patrol, and then you went to fraud with banking and economic crimes, and then sonar, which is the sexual registration.
Correct.
And then moved into sex crimes.
Correct.
And the last case we talked about was the 80-year-old being sexually assaulted by a parolee, I take it, and which is horrific. I'll just let you lead us to the next case. And you know me, I like from start to finish. Color us in from getting the phone call, what goes through your mind, even as you're driving in the patrol car, or not even patrol car, unmarked car to get to the scene.
You know, it's funny that you hit on that because I talk about that when I teach. You know, we teach classes and we talk about stress and what is stress and when does that start with a case. And it starts when your name gets put on it for me, as assigned to me. And I talk about that. If my boss were to give me a case, assign it to me on a Monday and say, you don't have to work it for 2 weeks because the victim's gone, I will think about that case for 2 weeks until I work it. So the stress for that or the process starts with the phone call or whatever form of notification. It might be someone walking into the office or an email sometimes or a text or whatever.
How clear is the message? I mean, I'm assuming you get vague messages and very clear messages. Do you know what you roll up onto?
Depends on the source. You know, if there is one of the sex crimes people on scene that needs help, generally the message is very clear. If it's coming through dispatch, who knows? I could be going to a child molest and they really are just lost their dog, but they want to talk about being molested years ago. Not really that extreme, but dispatch patrol, sometimes it's not what it seems until we get there and figure it out. But oftentimes we do get called to assist patrol. And in this particular case, it was a patrol assist, 7:00 at night. And it was the call came out as an AOA social services, assist outside agency, social services. Those typically are, I don't want to say feared by patrol, but generally not liked.
Why?
We call them bucket calls. Because it's going to be a nightmare generally. Social services is involved. They're calling the police because they probably have to take somebody into custody and or remove kids from a house. Generally is why we're called to that. And that was this case.
Where were you when you got the call?
I was at home. It was about 7:00. I remember this because it made an impact on me because it was an AOA social services to a local school. Right? I overthink everything. So, it's 7:00. I'm going to help social services at a local school. And the call said, meet in the principal's office. That tells me the school's people are still there. Social services is still there. Schools generally aren't in business at 7:00. So I guessed correctly that they'd been at this for a while. By the time I get called, they'd been at it since before school had called.
Let me ask you real quick. Was it an audio? Was it a voice call or was it a text or an email?
I got a call from patrol, my sergeant who had been notified by patrol sergeant.
Okay.
So I got a call on my cell phone, responded to school. I was the only one to respond because there were so many people there. There was a training car there, which means there was a patrol deputy with a trainee, patrol trainee. There was a couple other deputies there. There were 2 social workers. There was a principal, assistant principal, and I think 6 or 7 teachers, as well as the suspect, the victim's sister, and the victim's mom. When I got there, right? The parking lot was full. All the lights were on. It didn't look like nighttime, right?
And where was the victim or survivor?
The victim was in a conference room in the office. I think it might have been like attached to the principal's office. So I got briefed when I got on scene. I was briefed by patrol, who briefed me in the presence of the social worker. The allegations were that her biological dad had molested her. And for purposes of keeping her identity, I will say that it was not sexual intercourse. Rather, it was another type of sexual activity, significant sexual activity.
Can you state the age of the person?
Between 15, 16 years old. So what I was told is that the victim has an older sister who was also present. Probably a month prior, the victim had notified her sister. Actually, the victim had been crying, and her sister said, "What's wrong? I know something's wrong." And she confided in her that dad had done inappropriate sexual things to her. He had come into her room when she's sleeping. They both cried, shared a moment, and then revealed this to their mother, who also lived in the home. Biological parents both lived in the home.
Did the sister have any?
No. Sister had not been molested by the suspect. Mom didn't believe the victim. Mom didn't believe the victim's sister. Mom told the victim and her sister to not say anything, that the dad was a breadwinner of the home, and to don't talk about it to anybody. And that was about I think 3 weeks to a month prior to the actual culmination of this, when I was called to the school. So those things are good for me as an investigator, because it adds to the credibility, because that's something that I can track down. I can go interview the older sister and put some validity to it. The call that I responded to was the result of the mother. The mother had discovered some tobacco or alcohol or something inappropriate in her daughter's room, the younger daughter, and had taken it to the school in an effort to, best I can figure, make her teachers not like her. Really odd behavior. The girl had really done well in school. Her teachers had rallied behind her hard. She had struggled quite a bit in school, and she had explained she had some trouble at home. So her teachers really had rallied behind this kid. So much, in fact, that when one of the first things that happened to me when I walked into the school is I had 2 or 3 teachers come up to me and tell me that they were willing to take her as a foster. And way early in the game, I just got on scene. They figured out who I was, or who they thought I was, knowing that I was probably going to ultimately make a decision. They clearly knew more than I knew at that point, if they realized there might be a foster situation. Anyway, so with the mom coming to the teachers, the kid was very, very embarrassed, scared, and she revealed what had happened to her by her dad. The activity had continued. It wasn't a singular instance. It had occurred recently that week. So it is an effort.
You said it wasn't a series of events. This is a one time, or
no, it was not a one time. It was a series of events. And the victim, which is not uncommon, it's not I would say it's common, but it's not every time, certainly. It's not uncommon for when a kid gets in trouble to say, yeah, I'm a bad person, I've done things, but this is what's really going on in my life. I'm not saying, because kids do that, right? Deflect, right? My brother, look, he spilled his milk or whatever. It's a form of that, but oftentimes it's true. And that was the case here. She said, yeah, the alcohol or cigarettes or whatever is mine, but here's what my dad's doing to me.
Remember that, what my dad's doing to me. We're going to take a quick break. The worst time, whatever, but we have to do it.
Okay.
For our sponsors. All right, we'll be right back.
Welcome to GetSafe, a proud provider of peace officer standards and training, where strong communities are built alongside law enforcement. GetSafe has taught thousands of law enforcement personnel through the years, changing mindsets so that we can have positive outcomes in the field. Our ultimate goal is to always ensure a safe interaction for law enforcement and community, never foregoing our tactics and always enhancing our toolbox. My name is Stuart Haskin, founder of GetSafe. Thank you for all you do in keeping our community safe, and we hope you join our movement for change.
Hi, welcome back, and we're still here with Jeff, who's just getting into the meat of the case, and it was that the stepfather, and let's go from there.
Biological father.
Oh, biological.
Biological
That's even
father.
worse.
Yes. Not that, right? Either way, it's bad.
Yeah.
So, all these factors when I arrive on scene play a part certainly in my thought process. I have all these teachers. I have principal, assistant principal. I think I went through it. The mom, the dad, the daughter, the sister, a training team, 2 deputies, a couple other deputies that were there to help out, a supervisor, and me. So I'm briefed by the social workers and the patrol deputy with his trainee. The patrol deputy asked if I would care if the trainee sat in with me on the interview, just for his experience. I said I don't have a problem with that. We generally would never put 3-on-1 in an interview. 3 people could be deemed as coercive in nature, which is beyond the scope of this talk. But nonetheless, 2 people, I'd be happy to have a second person as long as I can control what he says or doesn't say, which was fine, so he could listen and be privy to the conversation. So the social worker, the 2 social workers, it turns out one of them is in training as well. I didn't know either of them. I actually became friends with both of them after this call, or I became to know them after seeing them in additional calls. But we were sitting at the table. It's funny. We were sitting at the table. It was me, both patrol deputies, another patrol deputy, a sergeant, and the 2 social workers. And they were asking, what do we do with this? Here we have these allegations. We have the parents. They live across the street virtually. What are we going to do with this? And I said, well, it's simple. I said, I will talk to the victim. I'll talk to the mom. I'll talk to the sister. Then I'll talk to the victim. And then I'll talk to the suspect, get him to confess, and I'll take him to jail. And the social worker looked at me, and I said, well, I would bet you lunch, but I just met you, and I don't want to take your money. And, right, I was just being a smart aleck, right? I'm like, oh, it's simple. They'd been there for 4 or 5 hours trying to sort through this, and that's what I said was going to happen. Did that happen like that? Not like that, but yes, ultimately, right, that's the process, or at least I would like it to follow. And I kind of gave away my hand, but I would ask, who would you talk to first? Who do you think? I'm asking you.
Oh.
You're there, you got a school full of people, you have a victim, suspect, parents, sister.
Yeah, I mean, I actually did investigations, but I don't know, for some reason I would like to feel the backstory first before I have as much factual stuff before I go after the perpetrator, knowing everything, talk to the daughter, interview the mom, interview the teachers, see if they had underlying behaviors that they would see and notice signs of abuse that they weren't sure. I think I would gather all that before.
Okay, good. And I'm sorry, I kind of just, I didn't tell you I was going to do that. I was just curious, your thought process, and maybe someone else can think, who would you talk to? Because that honestly is one of the most critical things. Who do you talk to first?
Yeah. So who?
I talked to the person furthest away but involved in it.
Okay, and then
and then work towards the point, right?
So I wasn't completely. I think I was right around that middle zone of right.
So I talked to the teachers first.
Yeah.
What happened? What happened today? And this is what happened. It was very quick with them. I'm not going to get a lot into it because they weren't there during. I'm there for the acts.
Did they ever say they had seen signs of abuse?
No,
Nothing.
they had never seen anything, but they all spoke very, very highly of the girl and her sister, and sadly not so highly of their mom or dad. They, like I said, they had really rallied behind this girl as a group. The teachers had talked. Let's, get her through school. She's doing well. She has good, goals. So they had really rallied behind this girl, which was impressive. Finished talking to the girls. The teachers. And then I spoke to mom. My conversation with mom was very short. She, trying to be polite with this, she was kind of rude with me. She said that both her daughters lie, not to believe them. And then she highlighted the items that she had found in her younger daughter's room as if evidence that she was not a good person. I asked her about the allegations. She denied them. She denied them coming and talking to her, and she denied telling them to keep it quiet. So then I talked to the older sister. The older sister was just like the story I had heard. She said exactly what, she had caught her crying. She was looking out the window crying. She asked her, she said, I looked in her eyes, I could tell something was wrong. She told her this, and it had happened again recently this week, and that's what had caused daughter to, using the alcohol or cigarettes or whatever it was. So the story at that point was believable. I then interviewed the victim, and with a victim like that, I can't fix the family. I can't fix the dad's relationship, the mom's poor parenting. And I just tell her, I'm here for what your dad did to you. I don't care about anything else. As far as the alcohol, the cigarettes, I don't care about that. I understand she's doing well in school. My goal is to, keep her in the home and keep her in school.
Keep her in the home because, I'm jumping to conclusions because in my head I'm thinking that mom knew way more than she was letting on to, but that's just me. But so your goal is trying to keep her in that home, or if it was
feasible,
unfounded, yeah.
if feasible, absolutely, or at least keep her in school. And social services is way different than most people think. They will do what they can to keep that kid in school that's doing well. So I kind of put a value on my victims, like whether or not I believe them. I'm not always right, clearly. I use 0 to 100, honestly, in my own mind, and I put her very, very high value of believable, just based on everything, the circumstances, the teachers, the mom. It was just believable to me. Plus, you have to look at what does the victim gain from this, right? She's just thrown a wrench into her life, destroyed.
Yes.
What she knows as her current life, and she knows that. Her friends tell her that. She knew that. So then I had to finish my interview with her. She cried. She was very, very upset. The social workers were upset. So then I said, all right, we're going to interview the subject. Got him in. He's clearly in custody, which would start Miranda. We have to read people their rights that are in custody. Custodial interrogation requires Miranda. So
now, were you interviewing him? Is that at the school still, or did you take him in? Okay.
At the school still. Audio recording it. With a case like this, I would have 2 recorders for redundancy. I can't risk not getting it. I would have those recorders concealed so he couldn't see them, just to make it easier, less of a conflict in case he had an objection to that.
Right. Before you walk in, what's going through your mind? How do you compartmentalize what you just went through? You just spoke to the young victim that you felt pretty highly that this incident happened. where you compartmentalize everything before you walk in there to make sure there's no bias. And you, again, I'm assuming you would have to make a connection to get more information.
I have a goal, and it's kind of like, right? I look at it like digging a ditch. It's got to be so deep. Same with the interview. I got to get from point A to point B. It might not be easy getting to point B. I might not get to point B, but I got to at least try. So I'm optimistic generally. You get like a good feeling. Like if you and I were to talk before I walked into that interview, I would have said I have a pretty good feeling about this guy, just based on
Good feeling that he's guilty.
yes,
Okay.
and
So,
a good feeling that I'll probably get him to confess.
yeah.
And I base that on his demeanor and the interaction I'm getting from the family and everyone that I've talked to. Dad doesn't appear to me to be very like a strong-willed person, if that makes sense to you. I don't see him throwing his weight around. He's not loud, boisterous in the office. So that's a plus for me. At least in my mind, I think it is. So walk him in, sit him down. I unhandcuff him. There's lots of people around. I don't have to. I do it. It doesn't change Miranda. He's still not free to leave. I just do it so he's more comfortable. It's part of rapport building. I don't make him any promises. Things you have to be careful about. I don't tell him you're gonna go home tonight. I don't tell him anything like that. It was a very, believe it or not, short interview. It was less than probably 5 minutes. The term I used is, it was like cracking an egg. It was so easy. It was quick. And just the right.
Right. We're going to stop right there before we find out what you found out. We're going to take a quick break and come back. All right. We'll be back.
Anybody go, yes, that's totally me.
My name is Randy Thurgood. I work for Central Utah 911. I am going on 3 years of dispatching. I have never had a training like this before. I liked that it was directed towards dispatchers. A lot of trainings aren't. And I also liked that it was not a huge amount of information overload, just enough that you can take it back and apply it and not feel overwhelmed.
All right. We're back. And on unintentional cliffhanger pause for sponsorship. So we're going to go back to Jeff. You had just said you got what you needed. What was that?
A confession. And, instead of just telling you what he said, I really feel the need to explain some of that. One of the things that we often are tasked with, and, virtually anybody that's been in police work or is currently in police work or wants to do police work, and you tell them you work sex crimes, every single one of them, they get a sour look on their face and go, oh, yeah, I couldn't do that. I have kids. Or, oh, I couldn't do that. I care too much. I get it. And often people think we sit around and look at child porn. That's a very, very small part of what we do when we have to, right? And that is very minimal part of the job. The other part of the job that we often have to do is talk about the sexual activity, the inappropriate sexual activity, like it's not inappropriate, or like we understand it, or we, can understand why something happened. And often the way we do that is we minimize. So like with this guy, I started out with, I can tell you care very much for your daughter. Is that something I believe? No, right? If he cared for his daughter, he wouldn't do what he did. And a lot of people don't understand how I could do that. Well, it's called lying, right? I don't mean it. I can say it with sincerity so that they believe me. With this particular case, case dependent, and what happened dependent, you can understand or at least allude to understanding it. Like I did with him, I said this, what you did to her wasn't bad, which is not how I feel or what I believe.
Of course.
But I minimized to him and said, this appears to be a boundary issue. I can tell you care very much for her. You would never do anything to hurt her. And he starts nodding. When someone starts nodding that early on, I realize that I'm on the right track. And I said, if this is something that you did because you're feeling lonely or you care for her too much or whatever, it doesn't matter to me, his reasoning. All I really want at this point is an admission that he did in fact do it. With something like this, right, we don't even have to have him admit knowing it was a crime. Everybody knows that's a crime. So it was a very short interview. I got what I wanted. So once that happens, he's going to jail. That's clear. I don't need to transfer him for an interview. I'm good with that. I need to make a determination or help social services decide. Now we have 2 teenage girls and a mother. So generally our battle cry, and this goes true for patrol, if someone were to call a sex crimes investigator with a question, my question back to them on any call, are their kids safe or not safe, or anyone else that's not safe? That's my thought process. So with her, with the mom and the kids, I go to the mom and ask her, if he makes bail tonight and gets out, what's going to happen? Meaning, is he going to come to your house? That would therefore jeopardize the kid's safety. And her answer to me is, he's my husband. My daughter's alive. He's going to live at my house no matter what you do. Right, is her feeling. Which makes where those kids go for the night clear to me. They're not going home. I can't trust that mom won't let him in. She's already told me she will. Kind of a funny part to this story is it's dark outside. I'm talking to mom. I'm tired, right? It's probably by now 10 o'clock.
How long were you out there for as of 10 o'clock?
I was there probably 4 or 5 hours total, but by the time the case is over. And so, I'm mad at mom. I'm mad at dad, right? Not mad, but, it just poor parenting. It just, it's...
To say the least.
Yeah, it just, it upsets you that they would allow this to happen to their children. They brought them into the world. Now they're screwing them up. So I said some things to mom. There was a social worker present, probably a good thing. So, my language wasn't too inappropriate. But generally, the last thing I say to someone like this is, don't wait for your mother a year award. It's not coming in the mail. And I think I said that loudly, like right in her face. I turned on my heel to walk away, and there was the patrol sergeant standing right behind me. He, is a lot nicer than me, maybe has some beliefs that are better than mine. And I wouldn't honestly have said what I said in front of him had I known his presence. And I was worried about that, except he pushed me out of the way and gave her a dose of how he felt about her. He as well had listened to this. He knew the details. The mom was not protecting the kids, and he was as frustrated as I was with this family. Little side note, do I follow a case like this through the courts? Only if I'm involved. As a witness, I was involved in this. The subject got sentenced to prison. He got out. He apparently didn't understand terms and conditions of prison. He didn't report. He absconded from prison 3 different times, and I went and got him 3 different times.
So abscond is...
He left the state.
Okay.
And me and Eric Caseman, which you're familiar with, went and picked him up 2 or maybe all 3 of those cases and brought him back into Orange County.
So did he ever serve time?
He did, yes.
How long?
I don't remember his time, but if I remember right, I think it was 4 or 5 years, something like that. Not significant.
So what happened with the girls? Did you know? I know
never reunited with the family is the best they will tell me, which is fine. I'm happy with that.
Yeah, it's funny because I, work on, it was a sexual assault response team going to hospitals, and I went out for a child who was molested by the dad. And the mom was just waiting and kept asking, when's he going to be released? Because he was the breadwinner. And I go, are you kidding me? We're here in the hospital, ER right now, and they're doing, kits and everything. It was, there's a sad level. I mean, and, there are resources out there that can help subsidize things, but that there's got to be a level where you just say no. Anyway, all right. So he did serve some prison time. As far as you know, the survivor is never reunited. So hopefully, and it seemed like they had a good support team with the teachers, and I'm sure they must have done something. Take that home. I assume your kids were close to that age. How did that feel when you got home, or your thoughts driving home?
You know, you certainly have a feeling of satisfaction. And I'll be honest with you, had he not confessed, I'd have arrested him anyways, based on the circumstantial evidence of the girls, not circumstantial, but absence his confession, we didn't have any evidence. With the DA file, probably, I'm guessing from my experience, with her having told her sister, corroborating that. But you know, you always have the teenagers lie oftentimes.
No, absolutely.
And so it's very hard to. Could they have concocted this because they didn't like him and he was too strict? Maybe. In this case, no. There was too many details, and the way you investigate something like that, I think you keep that out of it. Coupled with the confession. Would they have filed without a confession? I don't know, honestly.
All right, what about you, though, personally? I'll get a little into Jeff's head, like, because, you see these things, and, because of our work, I've seen a lot of terrible things, and it does affect you. I mean, I've seen it, feel it, come across. A smile goes into a frown because, there's bad people out there. Did this one affect you, or you felt like you got what you needed and you could move on to the next? Were you in that zone? Because a lot of times we compartmentalize it, put it somewhere else, and then it messes you up at a Starbucks or something. Comes out. So I don't know.
I think the ones that you solved, that you put, like this one had a bow on it with the confession, the circumstances. It was, in the big scheme of things, it was a one-day case. There was certainly follow-up and certainly travel to, once he was out of prison and absconded. But this one, I clearly remember it all those years later today. So it stuck with me as one of the good ones. Okay. The
and
bad
you feel
ones,
like justice was served?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. All right. Well, until the next one, I'll have you noodle one for us, because I think this is a very fun. I'm going to take back the fun part. I mean, I enjoy talking with you, and now that we know that everything worked out. But I think it's a very interesting level of, just on the human behavior aspect, because you walking into the situation, you having so many other people around, everyone's seeing this, and seeing the support of the teachers, who probably felt the pain of the kid as well, because they see something special in this girl, and someone who was supposed to be her protector violated that. All right, well, thank you, Jeff, for your knowledge and your talent out in the street, and we'll see you again on this podcast, Movement for Change.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to our podcast, Movement for Change. We hope that our discussion has left you with new perspectives and insights that can help you change mindsets and save lives. Please visit us at getsafeusa.com for resources, trainings, and if there's a topic you want to hear about or you have questions, please email us at info@getsafeusa.com. Together, we can make the change we want to see.